Welcome to the information session on the Tropical Field Research Program that Seeds of Change runs in Costa Rica. These are 10-day programs that take place in the northwest part of Costa Rica. We're going to break into an information session that Beth Hunt, one of the directors of Seeds of Change, is giving to a group in Austin, Texas.
And I say that right off the bat because the thing that I recognized in this program is nothing that you're going to read about or understand through reading. It's really that there was nothing I had ever done at my high-end prep school here in the Twin Cities. My background, I went to Dartmouth College. I'm an engineer by training, and I worked for 15 years in environmental science. And I just I have a good sense of things, and I was floored by this program. I could just tell that it had just all the right pieces in place. So I was pretty happy to join Seeds of Change full-time in 2018 and be part of this whole idea of turning kids on to science for good, or at least in a way where they have a lifelong sense of learning about how great science is. So in the process of all this, we've had a little disruption with COVID. And meanwhile, we did run our program last summer, and very successfully. We wore masks for the initial phases until we were able to get 2 tests in a row showing that our entire group was COVID-free. And so we were able to run our program and do all the same collaborations and wonderful interactions with these amazing scientists that are our instructors in Costa Rica last summer, and that was amazing. The point of our program is to hit kids when they're at the right age and make sure that we help develop their creativity. This graph shows how creativity kind of gets lower as you get older. And so we have like a short period of time in order to really tell a kid that their creativity is there, that it needs feeding, and that they need to address big ideas and know that they can use all the tools that they had when they were 3 years old, all that curiosity and reaching out with all of their senses. We want them to continue to do that, and we need to do that. We all need to have our kid very much alive inside of ourselves in order to be effective lifelong learners. So we want to hit kids as soon as we can in the high school years, not later when they've already decided what they want to do. The key to our program is that the kids come up with their own research ideas, and we use the language original research for that. And that means they're following up on ideas that they generated. And maybe they generated that idea in a group of 3 or 4 kids, or maybe it was one of them had 10 ideas and everybody was like, wow, those are all great ideas. Let's all do those. But our program is unique in this sense. There's very few programs out there where the students aren't tagging along with someone else's research. And that's a very valid way of going. And so I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying that what makes us different is we really want the kids to hook in to their own ideas and uncover the issues that kind of might get in the way of them running a well-designed experiment, and have them reach those points of almost failure and get through them. And in doing so, they're using their creativity and they're using their ingenuity. And that's the critical thinking skills that we want to foster in these young people. Seeds of Change has 3 programs. The one we're talking about today is called Tropical Field Research. We also have a high-end program called Bioinformatics that's using big genetic data to also have kids ask original questions of genetic data and come up with comparative research analyses. It's an incredible program, and is one that kids can follow up with after the Tropical Field Research Program. We also run a program where we teach teachers how to run an antibiotic bioprospecting research class in their high schools. And we did our inaugural sort of pilot teacher training 2 years ago. Last year we did our first one, and we're scheduled for our second this January in New Jersey. Our idea here is that we want to bring this hands-on, real world, kind of research to high schools across the country. And we are establishing the basis to be able to do that. One of the things that we're doing is building a multi-million-dollar facility in Costa Rica that the water is just going in right now. And we're planning to kind of connect kids in the United States with an incredible tropical field research lab that's actually devoted to the high school age group, not college, high school. So that's Seeds of Change. That's kind of the basics of what we're up to. And of course, our goal is to prepare students for what's in and amongst us right now. There's been a lot of change in science, and kids need the preparation. So I'm going to talk about where we're going, kind of a daily schedule, a little bit about the kinds of things that kids can research. I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID-19. I'll show you a little bit about where we're going to be, and then I want to make sure to cover trip insurance options. I just want to take a moment before I start. If you want to unmute and just tell me, are there any things on this list that you feel like you already know, or you want to make sure there's something that's not on it that you want to make sure I talk about? Are we good to go?
I think this looks good.
Okay. All right. That's Costa Rica down there in the corner. So we'll be going from Texas area down to here, on about a 3-hour flight. Is that right, Shannon? Yeah. It's a beautiful place. And so at a minimum, we're going to run a science research program in one of the coolest places on the planet, in my opinion, where we get to interact with all these different critters on a regular basis. And so what happens to the kids is they like, when we're traveling for vacation, they recognize that they're in a really special place. But we're going to end out at the beach, but we're not going to spend our whole time at the beach. We're going to spend our time in the tropical forest. And that's, it's a rainforest. There's just a lot of life going on, and the kids just arrive and they recognize that, and they're on the edge of their seat. So if you want to ask us why we do it in Costa Rica, that's why. It's not just because it's exotic and all of that. It's that it gets the kids immediately peaked and ready for an interesting experience. Our actual program, we work up in this northwest quadrant of Costa Rica. So there is an airport here in San Jose, and then there's another one here in Liberia. So we fly in here usually, sometimes here, depends on the flights. But we'll fly in here, and our general itinerary is to travel about an hour and a half to our host facility where we're building this new building. And then on the we spend 8 days there. And then on the last 2 days, we'll travel through Liberia. That day, we'll all get tested for COVID for the purpose of flying home. Okay. But after we spend, it only takes about a half hour to get tested, we will then drive to the beach and expose the kids to a marine biology type of environment where we'll be looking at sea turtle hatcheries, the mangrove forest, and of course we'll go to the beach. So this is a little bit more of a close-up, but what's featured here is these are all the medical facilities that are all along our route. And so we're always close to a medical facility. And the distance by car from here to the place that I like to go where I have an English-speaking doctor is right here. And that 20 to 25-minute drive is the one that we take if your kid comes up with strep throat or, you know, something, you know, a tummy ache or whatever, something that we need to go to the doctor for. And that person, you know, the whole scale of doctors and care there is completely different than it is here. I actually have Dr. Martin on my phone I can text him. And so I have immediate access to this incredibly friendly physician, and that's going to be the big bonus that we have if in case we ended out with somebody who did test positive, is we have an immediate connection that's been there since 2009. So we're well known in this whole area, and I can address any follow-up questions that you have in this group or privately. But I'm pretty excited about the fact that we do have deep roots in the community. One of the neat things to look forward to here, Avery, is that where we go is between 3 volcanoes. And they're really big. Like, I don't know if you can really tell in this picture. This is sort of a satellite view that Google put together. And so it has these clouds in one picture and not in the other. But this is a huge volcano. This is the one that's a little bit closer to us, called Santa Maria volcano. We'll go horseback riding right up alongside this volcano to see the view of this whole area. And as we drive in, we'll go right by this volcano, the Miravalles volcano. And it's just incredible to see. These volcanoes are so high that this one and this one are perpetually in the clouds. So this is a tropical forest where down where we are is kind of a temperate forest, rainforest, and then we go up into the cloud forest, and we'll spend our last couple of days at the beach, which is what we call the dry forest. Oh, I wanted you to see that. Sorry, my clicker went on speed there. But here's a picture of Miravalles with that beautiful cloud cover. All right, so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of science while the kids are there, and that science is mixed with fun every single day. So the kids are constantly bonding with each other, having a blast, laughing, enjoying the environment. But meanwhile, we're putting on a science immersion research program that in the end, every single kid, I don't think I've ever had a kid come out of this program where they're not just super proud of the work that they did and the humps that they got over in order to complete their work. So the kids design their work, they work in small groups. Senior scientists, professors, his grad students work with the kids, and then they present their work, and everybody has to be involved in that in some way. And one of the big things that happens in this process is, just like preparing our kids for the workforce, we really want the kids to not only recognize the strengths of everybody in their group, but also their struggles, right? So the things that they have a harder time with. And we want them to be aware of both of those things and really come up with a plan that brings everybody's voice into the program. So we actually deliberately talk about that. And I think it's key at this age to be thinking about, how do I have a voice and not drown out somebody else? And so everybody has a voice at the table in this program. We do some training of the kids, and Shannon will be doing this. We do some training in a couple model species with the idea that the kids might find something interesting there to study. And so we talk about leafcutter ants, which I know you have in Texas, and we also have a really cool butterfly research facility that we work with the local women in the community to develop. And those two model species are really great because it turns out they actually harbor bacteria that secrete antibiotics. And those antibiotics help protect the leafcutter ant underground colony. and the butterfly helps protect the pupa from invasion of pathogens. And so one of the things we're going to teach your kids a lot about is antibiotic resistance and why we would look as researchers to insects as a way to solve that problem. And one of the reasons is that insects are already have relationships that have been around in some cases for millions of years worth of evolution, where relationships exist where the benefit to the bacteria is a benefit to the insect, and they work together. And some of those bacteria that secrete antibiotics that help that insect can be transferred to humans. And that's a field of research that our founding scientists developed our entire curriculum around. And that is to try to address the global community's problem with antibiotic resistance. So we're going to talk all about that and teach your kids about that. But if they get to Costa Rica and they're in this interesting environment and that's not what they want to study, and they can convince a couple of kids to study something else that they find interesting, if we think it's feasible, we will let them absolutely do that. But otherwise, they kind of get exposed to these two organisms and other features in the environment, and then they decide. They have a huge brainstorming sessions to come up with what it is they have questions about and want to answer. And the cool thing is, if you've ever spent time looking at leafcutter ants, they're cool to look at initially, but they're super cool if you know more about them. And so that's part of what we're going to expose them to. So this is a picture of I don't think they're very cute, but that's a big ant, a big Adacephalotes leafcutter ant cutting a leaf. And the little tiny ant has a role. That little tiny ant is going to hitch a ride on the back of that ant and protect that larger ant from flies that can come down and try and attack. Well, that ant has a mission. He's got to get that leaf back to the colony. So he's going to try and carry that leaf down the tree back to the colony. And so up here is what a colony might look like above ground. But these are some researchers that actually filled that a very large colony with, I think it was actually molten aluminum, let it set, and then they dug it out. And it's incredibly complicated under there. These ants take those leaves and actually chew them up and put them next to a fungus that they deliberately grow for food. So they're actually agrarian, and they grow their food in these little circular chambers. And these circular chambers are connected by all of these tunnels. And the details of this, again, they just pique your curiosity. I didn't know a thing about leafcutter ants before I got into this. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, these tunnels, some of them are for oxygen in, some of them are deliberately for carbon dioxide out. And the whole thing is put together to maintain the underground temperature at the optimum temperature for the ants at 23 degrees C. Like, it's incredible, the complexity. And so we know that using this model organism is going to pique the curiosity of a lot of kids, but we let them decide what it is of interest. And I mentioned that these model organisms are related to real life drug discovery. And Cameron Curry here in this New York Times article that's from 2018, not too long ago, just a little bit before COVID, was in the New York Times. This relationship between bacteria and the insects has been around for tens of millions of years. And from that partnership, this group of researchers that includes our chief scientist that is very likely to be at this program teaching in the summer, they've discovered a new antifungal drug called selvomycin. So it's pretty cool to see that this man, who is part of discovering selvomycin, is going to be working right alongside your kid. And when they work on their projects, sometimes they'll be more lab-based, like this picture shows, and sometimes they'll be out in the field. And Shannon knows that in the course of everyone's project, they'll be pushed a little bit to do both. Sometimes people like to do things in the confines of the lab because they have a lot of control over the variables that, and they can, set things just the way they want them. But even so, that's true. You still have to test it in the real world. And so they're often pushed really hard to get out into the tropical rainforest and test it there. Now, other groups are like, I don't want to be in the lab. I'm here in Costa Rica. Let me get out in the field. And then we're pushing them to have some kind of an experiment in a more controlled environment so that they can get some results that maybe lead to statistical significance. And we have a blast. We have a blast the entire time. So we'll go on hikes. We'll go kayaking through some mangroves. We even have a chocolate tour because where we stay actually is a cacao plantation, and the odor of chocolate being made is around you all the time. So parents, make sure you give your kids a little extra spending money so they can bring some back for you. We go on a community cooking class, which is a really cool opportunity. Night hikes are absolute best for finding cool critters. All of it. Every day we do something fun. And the kids have a great time. One of the things that we want to be careful of now is when we're having these cultural exchanges that we're doing them in a safe manner. And so the Seeds of Change person is going to go to every single offsite activity excursion that we do, and they will get there first, or while the kids are gathering, are literally going to pull out antigen tests, and they're going to test every single person that is going to come into contact with our group. So if we have a naturalist that wants to take us on an outdoor hike, that naturalist is going to wear a mask, and they're going to be tested and get their temperature tested, as well as be tested for COVID with one of the rapid tests. So we want to do all of this fun stuff, but we also want to do it safely. And when we get to the beach, we'll go to a turtle hatchery. Here we are kayaking. And if we're lucky in one of these many places where this community-run turtle hatchery is run, we might be there at the right time to actually see the baby turtles emerge. And because they do so much work, the chances of that are high. That we can't promise it, but that's our hope in working with them. So that's in the last 2 days. Seeds of Change is going to send every participant an actual N95 mask, not a KN95 mask, not a cloth mask. We want to make sure that when we sort of kind of are taking over responsibility of your young people, that they have the best that's available to them. And they might find that restrictive, but it's what we need to do in order to travel internationally. So I'm asking for your compliance to not allow them to wear a cloth mask, but to actually wear the N95 mask the entire time we're traveling. And here we are, we're going to test them. And so one of the things you'll sign off on is allowing us to test them when we think we need to. Our minimum plan will be to arrive in the next morning, give everybody a rapid antigen test just to confirm that everybody's sort of arriving healthy. And we will do the same on day 4. And then if we see the need to test them at another time, we will. One of the things that we'll do is we're going to maintain an empty cabin. And that is for the situation where somebody really does say that they just don't feel that well and they've got a positive test. We're going to be able to isolate them immediately and follow up with my friend, Dr. Martine, and see what our next steps ought to be for that child. And of course, that's exactly when we would give you a phone call. There are a few spaces that we're going to be in that are enclosed. We will wear masks in those locations. But the rest of the whole place, literally, there's hardly any windows. It's not that there aren't windows, it's more that they're all screened, or there's an entire, where we eat lunch and have breakfast is open on 2 entire walls, or where we do our classroom has this massive door that we're going to leave open unless weather doesn't permit. But when we're in an enclosed space, we're going to go ahead and follow COVID protocols.
And can I just point out, can you go back to that slide?
Yep.
That's our group from last year. And so those, a couple of them were from LASA and some other high schools. And we had some homeschoolers, but that's part of our group.
And they were great. And then where we stay, we're going to, at our host facility, we have these small cabins that hold 2 to 4 students. And then we have some larger cabins that hold 4 to 8 kids. So we'll be using both of those probably when this trip goes. And they have real bathrooms. There's no real, it's not a 5-star hotel, but they're not roughing it. It's very nice. The program costs just shy of $4,000. A couple of things to make sure you're ready for is passports can be slow in coming these days. It's much better now than it was last year. Last year, we actually had 2 kids who could not come because their passport arrived at their home in Austin 2 days after we left, or maybe even just 1 day. It was very close, but it wasn't soon enough. We want to make sure that passports have a good 3 months of eligibility on the day of our travel. And that's just because tourist visas last 90 days. And so the potential is for someone to overstay, but still need to get back, and they don't want their passport to run out during that sort of normal tourism period of time. The kids will need some kind of a book to write in. They're going to need to buy this leafcutter ant book so they can discover all the cool things about leafcutter ants and see if there's some things that they find interesting. It's a good idea to bring repellent that doesn't cause you to break out. So easy on the DEET. It's good to have DEET, but 100% DEET like melts things. It literally can go through the varnish on the cabin wood. And so, it's not different than the number of mosquitoes where you are. We do want to protect against mosquitoes for sure. One way we can also do that is to spray the kids' clothing before they leave with a chemical called permethrin. And that is a very good way to provide some all the time protection. And even if we wash their clothes 5 times, that chemical will stay on their clothing and help repel biting insects. So I would recommend doing that. I do that. And then the tuition does not cover, sort of the meals that your kids are going to need when they're on their trip. I think that's it for that. Okay, so the last thing is we really want you to protect your investment. And for probably less than $150, I've seen prices in the range of $112 to $130. I didn't look up the actual Texas version of this insurance. But with this insurance, the primary benefit you're getting is 100% coverage for any emergency situation that you could run into. It could be a death in the immediate family. It could be a loss of a job, so that this $4,000 is not the way you want to spend that money and you want to pull out. It's covered under a program like this. If your child were to get sick with anything that a doctor would say, yeah, you should not be traveling with this illness, you're 100% covered. And so that's what I would call sort of normal travel insurance. except the one that I'm going to recommend to you in all of our stuff is not one that we have any affiliation with. It's just, it comes with really good travel delay insurance, excellent medical that's above and beyond, like you're not really paying more to get this medical coverage. What you're really getting is protection for the cost of the program, but it comes with quarantine and medical insurance that you can't beat. So in the time of the pandemic, I need to explain the difference between what I call regular travel insurance and cancel for any reason insurance. Cancel for any reason this would be the scenario. Omicron's cousin comes along right before it's time to travel. And unlike Omicron or however I'm supposed to pronounce it, not to belittle it in any way, shape, or form, this looks scary to you. Well, because we're already in a pandemic, that first kind of insurance is not going to cover you because it's a known situation that we're in this. But if you paid $100 more for this insurance for cancel for any reason, and you were nervous, and maybe for good reason, but you were nervous, you can pull out and get not 100%, you'll get 75% of what the cost of the program is. And it's not like, oh, I should go look for the cancel for any reason insurance that's 100%. They don't exist. So if you want to have that safety, you have to pay a little bit more. I can tell you that from my personal experience, I think that the first option is plenty, but I know people who this would be like, okay, yeah, I'm doing that. I'm getting canceled for any reason. So that's your choice. That's what's available. For me, I just want to make sure I'm protecting my investment in case something's happening to me. And so I just wanted to cover that travel insurance, because I think in this environment, when you're making this kind of an investment for an incredible program for your kid, we can't just wait for life to happen forever and ever. And that's why you're listening to me right now. But we also have to be prudent and protect your investment. This, by the way, is the view from where we eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's not bad.
Lastly, to register for a program, please navigate to the registration menu item on our webpage.